What's up, everybody? Bandit and Chad here for another Taco Tuesday, and today we really need your all's help. We're both in the market for getting new tires. If you saw our most recent videos, you're probably understanding why, but the tires that come stock on these vehicles are okay at best. They're certainly an all-season. Mine are an all-terrain here with the Goodyears on the TRD off-roads, but they're not very aggressive, and a lot of times the traction control system can make up for this kind of tire deficit, let's call it, but not all the time, and we really do want to upgrade to a more aggressive tire. So there's a couple of them that we've been considering. Chad is probably looking at new tires a little bit sooner than I am. I'm probably going to wait a little bit longer, but there's a couple different brands and a couple different tread designs that keep showing up.
Right, so the one in particular that seems to come up a lot in the off-road community, especially with a lot of Toyota drivers, even some Jeep Wrangler drivers, and even a lot of you guys are running them on your rigs, but that's the Falken AT3Ws. Now that is a slightly newer tire. I believe they've been out for maybe a little over a year now. I'm not exactly sure when they did come out, but we've read a lot of positive things about them, and I've even watched some videos on YouTube of people doing reviews on them, and I've heard some really good things about them. And of course it comes with a decent, 55,000 mile warranty and everything like that, but that's not the only tire that's in the realm of consideration, even though that does seem to be the one that we hear about the most, considering the price. Gosh, has that road gotten worse?
Wow, I don't know where that came from.
Anyways, so when we're looking at these types of tires, we do look at the price. It is a big factor in it, and of course, if money were no object, the BF Goodrich KO2s would probably be what I'd end up getting. But where I can probably get a decent enough tire for what I'm doing for nearly half the price of those KO2 tires, that's a pretty, compelling thing to do. Now, Bandit has run the KO2s before on previous Tacoma that he did have,
right.
And he really enjoyed those tires. And, like we said, if money were no object, I mean, that would definitely be something to consider.
Right. Now, the KO2s aren't perfect. They do have kind of a downfall in mud. They don't quite clear the siping quite as fast as I would like, but for an all-terrain tire, they're definitely really good. They're very quiet on-road. The on-road handling and mannerisms are really, really nice. However, when you hit the dirt and you air down, that aggressive sidewall really does help you. The issue with the KO2s, like Chad was alluding to, is they run close to $200 a tire. The Falken Wild Peaks run a lot less than
120 to 140, depending on LT or P-rated tires. I mean,
right.
It all depends on what you want. But that's another thing about it, and our buddy Bryce actually kind of mentioned this to me last night when we were all hanging out, and he was kind of considering these tires as well, the Falkens that is, and was saying that the difference between the P and the LT all depend on kind of what your usage is. Obviously an LT tire is going to be a bit more expensive. It's a heavier tire, it has more ply, but it doesn't have as good of road handling manners as a P-rated tire, which if we can make up for the fall in ply and the strength of the tire in smart driving like we have been doing with the tires that are currently on our vehicle, I've not had any issues with chips taken out of the tire or getting cuts or anything in the sidewall, and they're just typical all seasons. But that's more to the smart driving when we do take it off-road. Obviously those tires are not made for it, so we're trying to decide whether or not a P or an LT would be necessary. I feel like I would be okay with a P-rated tire with continuing the smart off-road driving, but it's definitely worth asking you guys your opinion on all of this. Like I said, all these factors, taken in, like price, reviews, everything with the tire, it's definitely something worth asking you guys about, as well as telling us about other tires that you guys are familiar with, whether it be Coopers, or even recently I've found out about a company called Hercules, and I mean, I didn't even know about them, but apparently they make an okay all-terrain tire as well. So definitely worth hearing your all's opinion on all of this.
That's absolutely right. And one thing that we do kind of want, what we're after, is an all-terrain tire like Chad was talking about. Obviously there are a ton of good mud tires. The KM2s from BF Goodrich, a lot of Nittos are really great mud tires, but you may have noticed that we do spend a lot of time on the road and on the highway, And mud tires can become questionable at very best in the rain or you know, a lot of different other factors.
And they may not wear very well.
Right, either. And ultimately we are vlogging in this truck, and it makes sense to have a somewhat quiet tire. Now obviously they're going to be a little bit louder than what comes on here stock, but we're trying not to get, you know, super aggressive mud tires that you hear only the tires and not necessarily us when we're going down the road. So that is certainly a factor as well. So another thing that we are going to do here is Chad's actually going to switch over to a 16-inch wheel instead of the 17s that come stock on the Sport. The reason for that is obviously more sidewall equals better, softer riding when you're off-road, and also you can air down more. Now the 17s are probably better on-road for sportier driving, but ultimately these are trucks. We do take them off-road, and we like them to ride as soft as possible. Obviously the more rubber and more air that you have versus metal or alloy in the wheel, the softer it's going to ride and the better it's going to be overall. So that's why he's going to do that. But there are some different sizes that we're considering as well.
Right, so when looking at the different sizes that you can get for the tires, there are options for 17 and 16-inch wheels, but as Bandit was saying, I am going over to a 16-inch tire, or 16-inch wheel rather, so I can get some more sidewall on there, ultimately for better off-road handling, riding, and ultimately I can air down a bit more when it does come to some of the trails that we do go to. So the size that I'm looking at is a 265/75 R16. And that is, for those of you that don't know, the largest size that you can go on a 16-inch wheel on the stock suspension on the Tacomas. So that is my reasoning for that, and figured, you know, if I'm going to upgrade the tire, might as well get something a little bit bigger with more sidewall, and all the reasons that we mentioned for going to a 16-inch versus the 17-inch that does come standard on the TRD Sport. Now, while I love the rims that are on the TRD Sport and how it handles on the road, I don't think this is really going to change too much of the road handling. Obviously, we will let you know how all of that does end up working out. But ultimately, yeah, that's kind of the size that I'm going to go to, because if I go any larger than that, especially like a 285, the closer I get to a 33-inch tire, I'm definitely going to have some rubbing, and I really don't want to mess with body mounts or chopping out any of the inner fender well or anything like that. I mean, it's something I don't mind doing, but that's just not really something I want to do to the truck at this point in time.
Right, and if you're not familiar with the way tire sizes work, they used to be, when we were doing like English units and everything like that, or American units, you'd have like a 33 by 1050 by 16 or something like that, and that'd be a 33-inch tall tire on a 15-inch wheel. It's 10.5 inches wide, or whatever I just said. Right. With these new ones, a 265, the first number is the width of the tire. The second number is the aspect ratio, which is kind of the percentage of the width that is half of your sidewall, and then the last number is still your wheel. So Chad's 265/75 on a 16, they would be the same width, but overall a little bit taller, a little bit more sidewall than what comes stock on these trucks from the factory.
Right. So starting off with some news for this week, Ford is recalling their Fusion and MKZ models. Obviously, the MKZ is the Lincoln version of the Ford Fusion, but they're recalling 1.4 million of these models because their steering wheels are falling off. Now, this is alarming to anybody who has experienced this. Basically, what is happening is that a nut right behind the steering wheel, I guess as you're driving, maybe some vibrations throughout the vehicle or some improper sealing of that nut on the steering wheel causes it to loosen up, and it ultimately falls off. And then when you go into a turn like we are right now, or you come to a stop or something, or pull on the steering wheel comes off right in your hands, and obviously that's not a very good thing. So if you have a Ford Fusion or MKZ, definitely look into you know, that online. You can probably go on to Ford or Lincoln's website, and there'll be a service notification or something on there, or Ford or Lincoln will send you some paperwork in the mail letting you know, this is an issue, we're going to do it for free, blah blah blah. Anyways, hope y'all can get that figured out, though.
Right, so with some more positive Ford news this week, Ford has confirmed that they are producing the Bronco in 2020, the new version of that, and that will be built here in the United States, which is even better news. But there's also going to be another smaller off-roader to follow. Now, we haven't heard a whole lot about this, but we're guessing that the Bronco is going to be the larger one of the two, kind of be more slotted with a 4Runner or like an Xterra or something like that. where the other one is going to be a good bit smaller, like I said. Now, with the Bronco nameplate making a return, I personally think the coolest name that they could possibly call the smaller version is the Bronco 2. You know, referring back to the older Broncos, the Bronco 2 was a very small vehicle. And really, really great off-road. I still see them around a lot as hunting vehicles and a lot of other things like that for people going up in the mountains. But hopefully we'll see that and have more information on that before too long. So our final story this week comes from FCA, Fiat Chrysler, and it regards the new Jeep JL. Now, in the concepts and the early pictures that we saw from Jeep of that new JL, they had a really interesting picture of the two-door Rubicon in red, if you remember that picture, and it made a lot of commercials as well. But it had a new kind of half door that we hadn't seen before. Now, it was like a traditional half door on the upper half, where it did not have the metal frame of the door, and it stopped around elbow level or so. However, it had a see-through glass piece there around your foot, and I thought that was a really interesting idea to help you kind of see out your corners a little bit better and help with tire placement and everything else. And Jeep called that the donut door. Well, Jeep also came out this past week and said that they will not actually produce the donut door, which is kind of a disappointment. They said they are going to continue to make the half doors very similar to what we saw in the past with the JK Wranglers, but the donut door would not be making a return, and that was more of a design study.
Right. So, like you said, I mean, I'm disappointed that Jeep won't be doing that anymore with their new Wrangler, because that was a really cool design, I thought, because we've talked about it before, how that would be really helpful, especially if you're driving alone. You know, if you wanted to see what might be over on the passenger side area, and you don't have somebody like me sitting over here to tell you, yeah, watch out for what's over here on this side. So, yeah, kind of disappointing that they won't be doing that, but Jeep will still be making their half door the same as they did in the previous generation, just with the new sheet metal for the JL. So maybe you'll see some aftermarket company produce some half doors with a little window in it. I mean, that would be kind of cool for those of you that might be interested in that type of thing.
Right, and Jeep also said that for their customers that were looking more for a more open environment, driving environment, and they were disappointed by the lack of donut door, that they were going to be sure to produce tube doors, and I'm sure a ton of aftermarket companies will be producing those tube doors as well. So that's certainly an option if you want that as well. So thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and liking our videos, as well as following us on Instagram. We do really appreciate that, and the more we can grow this channel, the better, and the more people we can reach. So a huge thanks to all of you all who have already done that, and for tuning in every week. We really do appreciate that. So thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
See you guys.